Our next guest this morning is Representative Kevin McCarthy. Representative Kevin McCarthy serves as the Majority Whip, the third highest ranking individual in the U.S. House of Representatives, and is the proud representative of California's 22nd District. First elected to Congress in 2006, Representative McCarthy is a native of Bakersfield and a fourth-generation Kern County resident. In 2002, he was elected to represent the 32nd Assembly District in the California State Assembly. As a freshman legislator, he was selected unanimously by his Republican colleagues to serve as the Assembly Republican leader, becoming the first freshman legislator and first legislator from Kern County to assume the top Republican post in the California State Assembly. Back to you, Amy.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. I hope you got some coffee. It is not only the second longest day of the year, but also the hottest one so far. So I want to jump right into it. Congressman, I know the House has a big energy bill on the floor today, something that you've really shepherded and been a key part of. The administration has issued a veto threat for that bill. Heather Zeichel, who was here in your seat before you arrived, reiterated that position, and it doesn't seem like the bill will gain much traction in the Democrat-controlled Senate. So why do you think that it's important for the Republicans in the House to move forward with this bill, despite the challenges it faces once it's expected to pass this week?
Well, I think you have to have the debate about it. The President in the State of the Union said he supports all the above. We cannot continue to stay in the malaise as this country on our energy policy. We've never really had a national energy policy. So, from my belief is, have the debate. If they don't like our idea, then what's your idea? And sometimes if you just start the debate, it works a lot better. If the President comes out and vetoes a threat, it makes it more in a position that he now is going to have to answer what does he like and what does he dislike. We need to be able to move forward, and that's what we're trying to do. You will find that every single one of these bills came out of committee in bipartisan vote.
And do you think any of those bills could gain any traction in the Senate, either with some of the Republicans or even some of the Democrats?
In a normal year, I'd say yes, but I haven't seen the Senate do anything. I mean, it's rather amazing.
Voting on the Farm Bill right now. That's pretty productive.
Yeah. Two things, Farm Bill and transportation, and then they can't find their way out when you do a conference. But I'm hopeful. I mean, remember, Winston Churchill said you can always count on Americans to do what's right after they exhausted every other option. So we've exhausted a lot of options. But remember the jobs bill. The President said he didn't like it. The Senate said they didn't like it. It's law. So if we sit around and wait what you won't support, let's start moving things and have a discussion. I think the American public is at a position as well. Are we only going to talk about energy policy when the price spikes so high? Or are we going to start doing action? And if these bills have come out in a bipartisan, there's 7 of them. And it's not a complete energy policy, but it's a start. And that's what you want to have a debate. Look, we have a group in the House called HEAT, the House Energy Action Team. And we meet regularly, and we went across the country a couple weeks ago from all different places, from a refinery in California to an offshore in Louisiana, to drive an electric car in Colorado, and I went to North Dakota. And if there's one place in the country that you want to see that a state wrote an energy policy and it has transformed the state. I mean, I paid more than $250 to stay at a Best Western, and I was lucky to get the room. McDonald's, $15 an hour. Walmart has no socks on the shelves. I fly to D.C. every week, right, from Bakersfield to Denver to National. I come from an energy town, right? 72% of all oil in California is produced in my one county, more than the whole state of Oklahoma. We have wind, we have solar, some of the biggest fields. We have geothermal, I have nuclear just outside. But you know, when people are on the plane going to North Dakota to work, it has transformed it.
You also have some of the highest gas prices in your district as well, right?
That's right. I'm in California.
But even in California, your gasoline prices are even relatively higher.
Yeah, and there's a good study on this, and this is why you need a complete policy. Was it Popular Mechanics that just did a recent interview about why is that? Why is if we're producing more that the prices are higher? Well, you got 18 different boutique fuels, okay? You haven't built a new refinery since '77. The infrastructure to deliver it, the whole concept of a pipeline. Harold Hamm was just in the other day talking. It's 50% less to be able to send in a pipeline. They don't have the pipeline. The ability to move it when you produce it, the ability to refine it, the ability to find its natural resources. Now, if there's anything that America should look at when they craft a policy, and you get all these different arguments, like would production really help because you're in a global economy? Well, it'd help in so many different ways. Study natural gas. That's what we said 10 years ago in California legislature. They were talking about moving in these facilities so we ship natural gas in to sell to. We are abundant in it because we went and produced more. Prices lowered. You get manufacturing jobs that are actually now coming back based upon the delivery of natural gas and the ability to get it at a lower price. You can have that same effect in different areas.
So you talked about North Dakota, and I know you visited there and met with Harold Hamm, right, if I'm correct, who, as most of you probably know, is Mitt Romney's top energy advisor for his presidential campaign. Do you think North Dakota is an example of how the private sector can really lead in this sector, in the energy sector? Some people have tried to flip that argument to say that it's the administration not doing its job correctly. Others say that it's actually just the private sector doing a great job as it should.
No, I think it's a combination. Because when I sat there at the forum, to produce there, you still deal with government. I mean, the rules are you got to produce within 3 years because you're dealing with a lease or otherwise you lose it. What are the ramifications and the regulations on it? So they're dealing with state, and the state has a new production. The other thing you have to look at is technology moves us to a whole new level. It's now said that we have 6 times the amount of oil reserves as Saudi Arabia. The ability to get it in a new way. I mean, when you look at the way they're drilling, my fields in my district are more than 100 years old, and they're thicker, so you have to steam them. Now, we've gone through new technology. You know what we do? I just walked out of the field. They put solar panels out there to produce the steam to go down and steam it. So you use new technology at the same time. But what they have is, you've got to picture the old way of doing it. It's like being in a bathtub, right? And you want to get the water out of the bathtub, which would be the oil. So what we do in the past is put all these straws around and try to suck some up. The new way of going about doing in the shale is, it's like going to the moon. You drill down 2 miles, you turn, and you go right in there. So it's like just taking the bathtub drain now and pulling it out. It's more environmentally sound, it's more precision on where you go, and it opens up a new world for us. You look from North Dakota, one of the lowest unemployments. So if you're really talking about job creation, it'll change our trade deficit. It's the largest part of a trade deficit. It'll change our foreign policy. Read the headlines today. We're talking about Iran sanctions going through. What does that determine? It'll change the foreign policy. It'll also do about job creation more than anything.
Do you think we should export LNG, natural gas?
I think anything we get extra abundancy, we should.
Your caucus has mostly focused on the fossil fuel production side of the all of the above agenda. How does renewables fit into this agenda, and what role do you think the federal government has in, if at all, propping up these new technologies for wind, solar, geothermal, and other ones that?
Well, I don't think government should pick the winners and losers. It should set a framework where the best idea wins, where science gets to determine, right? But you don't just want to pick one, and you don't want to punish one form of energy to pay for the other form of energy. Let them all go. Because if we're going to become energy independent, we're not going to get there one way. And you also realize that one resource is not going to last forever. So you want to have the bridge to the next technology to be able to do it. I think that's a little what Solyndra told us, government trying to pick it. There are other, I see a lot of solar fields that are, they're lowering the price, going to get there where it's going to be productive. So you got generation. I have wind. If you have a real policy that lasts a long time, you get the lower price in that because they're able to determine it further through. But this is where government holds it up. If you look at production, we have the highest production of oil that we've had since 1994. We're importing less, 45% since 1994. But that production has all been on private lands. Public federal lands has actually been down 14%. So government is actually holding it back in a manner. And even when you go to renewables, if people go in and trying to get a permit and they can't, you can't sustain it because within the tax credit it's not the time there. So you don't get the innovation in it, you don't get the time in, and then you don't have the infrastructure to bring the energy and electricity in. That is where government has to lay out a framework to create an infrastructure to allow it to blossom.
Do you think Congress should extend the production tax credit for wind?
I think we should do it further on, yes.
Is that something that you're going to be communicating to Speaker Boehner and other leaders in the House?
Well, yeah. I communicate about that, but doesn't mean anybody listens to me, you know? Got to remember that.
Heather and I spoke about this energy efficiency bill in the Senate, sponsored by Senator Shaheen and Portman. It's a bipartisan bill with broad support. I know there's a companion bill introduced in the House, also bipartisan. Is that also a piece of legislation that you support?
Well, I look like this. I think we should have the debate on the floor. I haven't gone through it enough to say I normally don't co-sponsor. I want to have an energy debate, and I want to have everybody allowed to do it. I don't like the idea that people use the term all the above and then are opposed to a pipeline or opposed to anything from below. If you're truly about all the above, then have the debate about every form of energy and create a structure where you're not picking one over the other and let them actually perform.
Another reminder that we will also be having note cards for this discussion, so I can ask the congressman some questions. So keep that in mind. I'll do that in the next 5 minutes or so. So talking about all of the above, going to the usage side of the equation, what role do you think the government, if any, has in ensuring that diverse energy sources are being used in the country, both in the transportation sector where oil continues to dominate, and then also the electricity sector, which we're seeing this pretty drastic shift from coal to natural gas. What role do you think the government has in ensuring that's a diverse set of...
Well, you posed the question, which role should government play? I think government has played the wrong role, and it goes more to a philosophy. My philosophy is to reward good behavior, not punish. Punish is the bully in the room. And the way I've looked at government do before, they punish and say you can't use something, even though we have an abundance of something, of coal and others, and it moves in another direction. But if you reward something, you'll get a natural trend towards there, and it benefits. So the direction of where the government is going now is the opposite of what I see that enhances greater growth. I think if you reward behavior, it's a better incentive.
Mm-hmm. There's a big debate around coal, and some congressional Republicans are charging that Obama is waging this war on coal.
He is.
Some people that I talk to say that it's not all economics, but the economics, the low natural gas prices, and the fact that natural gas burns more cleanly than coal makes it easier for natural gas to meet EPA regulations. How do you explain that market, that shift? I mean, utilities tell me that they're largely going to natural gas because of the low natural gas prices. I know some people even say that if Republicans really wanted to defend coal, they would block natural gas drilling, which is a silly idea, right? That would never happen. But how do you see the market challenges of coal compared to what the administration is doing?
I see the administration utilizing EPA and others to make it more difficult on coal to continue to do what they do. So then you have to shift. And that's where I talked about the punishment. I don't think you're ever going to find, Republicans believe in all the above, they're not dictating based upon how somebody drills. You just want to make sure it's safe in the process. The price dictates where someone drills. When I was in North Dakota, they brought a new rig in. Came out of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's had a great deal of growth. Pennsylvania's focused more, they have more gas. But because the price is lower, the rig found its natural place. It went to North Dakota, and it was drilling there. More opportunity, more for oil than for gas there, so it found its natural home in the process. That is the process that works better.
So your Democratic colleagues have charged that you're the most anti-environmental.
Really?
I'm sure you haven't realized that. So
How is that?
Well, that's why I'm asking you. So they've come out with a couple of reports, and they just had another release about that this week. How do you respond to those allegations? And this also shared by some of the environmental groups, and the administration is also constantly threatening to veto bills that your caucus has passed.
I think they just say that because I produce a bill. I don't think there's any merit to that. I mean, that's what's wrong with today's society. That if someone produces a bill, I mean, if you produce a bill or you produce an idea, you get demonized. This is the only town I know that gets rewarded for doing nothing. I mean, in society today, we should reward the power of the idea. If you don't like my idea, then produce another idea. Don't demonize a person just because they're going out and doing something. That's what's wrong. I mean, to say I'm opposed to the environment? Really? Have you ever seen my district? You ever see what I do on the weekends? Do you know what I did this morning? I was out bike riding in the process. I love the environment. Who doesn't love the environment? Who doesn't love clean air? But who doesn't want to find a natural medium where you can have jobs, protections, and enjoy it? This idea that you're going to close all of it down. I mean, I got parks in my area that used to be able to enjoy, national parks, but we have shut it down from the roadless and others, so now we're putting everybody in a smaller circle and putting more damage to it. We're closing down the roads where I get these wildfires, you can't fight now. I mean, let's be smart about how we do something for the next generation.
Talking about clean air, the Senate is going to vote today on a disapproval resolution nullifying an EPA rule controlling mercury and other toxic air pollution from coal-fired power plants. Do you support that EPA rule? Do you think companies need more time, or do you think EPA should go back to the drawing board?
One thing I think EPA should do is also base their decisions on science. Sometimes I find we grab some attainment level we want to be at with the science not there yet. So we should work with the science and let it move there instead of picking something out of thin air. If you base the discussion on science, it's a fair process all around. And I think that takes the politics out of it. That's where I normally look to.
Mm-hmm. So California has really led the way on tougher fuel efficiency standards, and that's been the model for the Obama administration's CAFE standards. Do you think a basic demand reduction of oil altogether is the right strategy for the transportation sector's dependence on oil? And do you support the administration's CAFE standards?
Well, see, this is the discussion. And this is the thing you need to look at. We are actually using 4% less. Now, why are we using it less if you study? Well, the economy's down. Price has gotten higher. If the idea is we're only going to punish to get there, so the idea of what I hear from the administration is you've got to raise the price even higher, who does that punish? Punishes all of us. I think the price is at a level right now that people make a fundamental decision. I mean, it's almost 100% higher than when you took office. When you look at people that go buy a car, they're looking for that economically reasons why. I don't think government should be picking the winners and losers. Solyndra, that's government trying to decide when there were a lot of good solar companies out there that survived based upon their own product, but it's government trying to pick which solar one. That is where it's wrong. I think we're at a medium right now where energy is, where we ought to stop looking about punishing and start looking about producing all. It will be a fundamental difference.
There's a couple of questions focusing on the tax code and your comment about how the government shouldn't pick winners and losers. Does that mean that you think the oil and natural gas industry and the renewable energy industry should have the same tax treatment?
Such as?
Such as tax breaks, subsidies. You have a temporary production tax credit for the wind industry compared to some of the tax breaks that the oil and natural gas industry have been receiving for almost 100 years at this point that are embedded in the tax code.
Well, you've got to understand whether it's apples and oranges. Wind is a little newer technology, so you want to get the benefit of it, so you give them a time frame. When you look at the investment, you're not getting the subsidies when it comes to drilling. You're taking your money. If you don't hit it, you lost in the process. No one gave you a subsidy for that. It's the production tax credit, so you actually have to produce. You want people, you want to be able to have, just like when the natural gas begins to hit, if we get more production and the price goes down, you want people to stay there. You don't want somebody else to corner the market inside the world and dictate to us what our foreign policy is going to be and others. That's something that we have struggled with in the past. Structure dictates behavior. The greatest movement that government has is within its tax policy. And if you look just how we do our tax policy overall, I'm a firm believer the tax policy overall needs to be reformed. Now, if you reform the entire thing, you can talk about doing it others. I think the corporate tax rate needs to go down. You need to broaden it. You need to close the loopholes. That's when you talk about overall. If you're doing one specific, you're doing it apples to oranges.
So do you think that if and when Congress does tackle corporate tax reform next year, that just to be specific, do you think that some of the oil and natural gas industry tax breaks could be repealed for at least maybe the big 5 oil companies? there's some difference between the independents and the major oil companies. Do you think that some could eventually be repealed?
I think if you got to look at the overall tax policy, when you're talking overall, I think everything's on the table in the process.
There's a question about electric vehicles, and I know that the key tax credit for that industry expired recently. Do you think that the government should continue giving tax credits to electric vehicles?
Well, I look at, for new technologies, I don't want to pick one industry, but I want the new technology to be able to have the bridge and the gap to be able to go there. So I would look and entertain the idea of seeing what is the ability to get there. Doesn't mean to be specific to one, but I look to the future that you can't live on fossil fuel forever. But I'm not going to punish fossil fuel today. We cannot live a society right now that's all renewables. We can't produce enough. So what is the bridge to the next technology? Create a structure that allows the new technology to be able to grow without government picking it, but science determining it, and allow what we currently have to prosper as well. So we have a lower price and ability as an economy to grow.
One part of one of the bills that's on the floor this week talks about how you need to take in cost considerations when formulating national air quality standards. I think I asked you about this actually on a conference call last week. Good memory. So the House, during one of the House Energy and Commerce markup of the bill, I know Representative Gene Green, a Democrat who often votes with the Republicans on a lot of these issues.
Because he represents Texas with a lot of refineries.
Right. He actually took concern with this part of the bill and now also has an amendment on the floor to repeal that part of the bill. You know, some people are interpreting it as if the cost is too much, then you can't implement that stronger air standard.
No, if you read the bill, all it says is you take it into effect, and the EPA has to produce a report to Congress. I think it was 6 months before it goes into effect. It doesn't stop the system. All it says is when you're going through, look at all the parameters. Because sometimes we make decisions that are way here that's not attainable, but create a great deal of damage inside society. So what's wrong with actually having a report to say, yeah, I did look at it. And if we do go here, this is what it will cost society economically. What's wrong with looking at the economic effects? And all this said is you had to produce a report that proves you looked at it so society knows. Are we still not a government that's made of the people so the people have the right to actually look?
Going back to the transportation sector, I know there's a couple of questions about how to ensure a diverse set of energy resources in the transportation sector. Something that I talked to Heather about and I know is being debated in Congress right now is the renewable fuels standard. It's encouraging more ethanol to be blended with gasoline. Some of the more advanced biofuels are having a tough time penetrating the market. Do you support the RFS? Do you think it needs to be adjusted to realize some of these market realities?
I think people are picking these items that are off over here. I just filled up at $4.20 a gallon. I think we ought to find the ability that if we have the resources in America and the private sector has gone where they produce more and the public sector has gone down, what is the stumbling block? I like to crawl before I walk and walk before I run. I worry about some of those things out there, but I'd like to get production up in America. I'd like to get the price lower, and I'd like to get America back to work. And I find this is a place that does all three. And then we can talk about the other things later. But we have a unique opportunity that we are stopping the ability to produce more in America based upon these other discussions about what something's going to happen long term. Well, I'd rather live in today and get today going back to work. So that's what this sets the bills are, and I don't want to try to have somebody defeat them based upon a different argument. We can talk about that, and that's when we say all the above. That is part of the discussion, but you can't set it. And the number one thing America needs, we need a national energy policy that you can measure. Metrics matter. You know, I gave most members of Congress on my side the book Moneyball. Anybody ever read Moneyball? I didn't think they read it either, so I rented a theater and made them go watch it with me. But you know why I love the book Moneyball? I like baseball. It's about Oakland A's and the Billy Bean. But this is what government needs, okay? Billy Bean has a choice coming out of high school, being drafted by the professional league or going to Stanford. The folks let it up to him, so he went to baseball. He had a mediocre career, played like 5 different teams, ended up with the Oakland A's, didn't do so well. About to be moved down, he says, hey, can I become a scout? So all right. becomes a scout, moves up to general manager, right? Well, here he is. He gets $30 million a year competing with the New York Yankees at $130 million, all right? So we're competing with the world, too, in economy, right? And we only have so much. So what he decides, and this is why government needs it, he says, I'm going to look at the world differently. I'm going to measure things. You ask Billy how he wins a baseball game, he scored more runs than his opponent. Not that he gets more home runs, not that he gets more no-hitters, not that he has more golden gloves. And that's kind of all the discussion we get, all the little sides from. He says, I score more runs than my opponent. So I'm going to look at things differently. So two guys are up for a draft. Both of them same age, both right-handed, both same batting average. How the other baseball teams do it, just go to the scouts and say, who should we draft? One will say, pick him, you know, he looks more like a baseball player. The other guy would say, pick him, he has a better-looking girlfriend, he's got more confidence than the other guy, right? Billy Beane asked the next question. When do they hit the ball on average? Well, no one ever asked that question before. Well, this guy hits every second pitch, this guy hits every fifth pitch. Who's better? This guy, because he wore 3 more pitches out of his opponent. What if we created a national energy policy that said we wanted to get to here, and then we're going to come back every 6 months and we're going to measure it? And when we measure it and we're honest and say we're not achieving where we need to be to get to the final result, let's look at why we're not there. How do we get national income? That we have all the above. Then you'll get into regulations. What are the regulations that are holding us back? What are the abilities that we're not opening up certain areas to be able to have permits? You want to talk about renewables. We want to do renewables. I'm in the Mojave Desert. We get stopped from the ability to put solar. Well, it's holding back there too. It's not just within the oil fields. I get wind energy. I'm one of the 4th largest fields. I've got a company put in $3 billion. But do they have the transmission lines to go through? So we've been going through that. What holds it up? The Forest Service. You know, there are so many angles for everything. But let's measure where we are in an honest approach and see what holds us back, try to achieve. That's what these 7 bills do.
Some people say that these package of bills could be indicative of what a Romney administration would do if he wins in November. What do you think?
Why is that?
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know. These bills were in before Romney was running. These bills passed on a bipartisan basis.
You spent some time with Harold Hamm. What did he have to say?
Well, Harold Hamm, I've spent being in North Dakota, I spent with a lot of people. You know what I like about Harold Hamm? A guy started when he was 19 years old, borrowed and got a little pickup truck. Drove water out to the rigs, took the next money, bought a rig. When you think of America and you think of entrepreneurship and innovation, what do you think? He risked all of his money to go down. And North Dakota had a little oil, but it's shale oil. And we never were able to get there. But if we could finally get to the shale, because it's looking like a piece of coal and the technology you've got to get, you frack it, bring it through. He hit 17, I think, dry holes first. Government didn't subsidize him for him. Government didn't. But he took the initiative and the wildcatting to do it. Now he's got some benefit for doing it, but he moved the entire economy. North Dakota, in 6 years, you know they just surpassed Alaska? They're the number 2. They surpassed California. Today is the first day of summer. It's also the anniversary in 1977 that the Alaskan pipeline started moving oil. We started moving 700,000 barrels. It's much lower now. So I like the idea that an independent America, the government opens up, and something we haven't thought of, somebody finds.
Well, Congressman, I would love to keep chatting with you, but we're out of time. You need to get back to the House to start that debate on the floor.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you all.